You stand in the shadowed barracks of ancient Sparta, the air thick with the putrid stench of sweat-soaked leather and the metallic tang of blood from fresh training wounds. Your youthful body trembling as the older warrior's calloused hands grip your thighs, forcing them apart in a ritual that twists education into violation. His breath hot and ragged against your skin as he thrusts between your legs in intercrural penetration, a practice deemed honorable, yet leaving you with the festering shame of submission disguised as mentorship, the groans of other pairs echoing around you in this grotesque symphony of institutionalized pederasty that every Spartan boy endures to become a man. This visceral initiation, shrouded in the guise of military bonding, reveals the shocking underbelly of Spartan society where sexual practices warp the boundaries between power, pedagogy, and perversion, subverting the heroic facade of these legendary warriors into a labyrinth of taboo intimacies that mainstream histories dare not fully expose. Shifting from that immediate horror, we delve into the authoritative chronicle of Sparta's hidden sexual realities, with a pursuit of eugenic perfection and martial excellence birth customs that horrified even their contemporaries in Athens and beyond, practices rooted in ancient laws attributed to Lycurgus, yet laced with the grotesque ironies of human frailty. Before diving into these forgotten stories of survival and suffering, if you enjoy learning about the hidden truths of history, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. I find it incredible that we're exploring these ancient stories together from different parts of the world, connected across time and space by our shared curiosity about the past. In the unforgiving landscape of Laconia, where the Eurotas River carved through rugged terrain, Spartan society engineered a sexual ethos that prioritized the state's needs over individual desires, beginning with the systematic revelation of pederasty as not merely an option, but an essential rite woven into the fabric of male upbringing, as evidenced by Plutarch's accounts in his Life of Lycurgus, where he describes how older men, known as erasts, selected younger boys, eromenoi, around the age of 12, to mentor them in virtue, courage, and the arts of war. Yet this mentorship invariably included sexual relations designed to forge unbreakable bonds, with the elder penetrating the youth's thighs to avoid the emasculation of anal intercourse, a distinction that Aristotle noted in his Politics as a deliberate safeguard against feminizing the future hoplites. This practice escalated in its disturbing implications during the Agoge, the brutal training regimen that stripped boys from their families at 7, subjecting them to starvation, beatings, and isolation, where pederastic relationships provided the only semblance of emotional connection, as Xenophon reluctantly admits in his Spartan constitution, portraying these liaisons as chaste inspirations, yet contradicted by later sources like Aelian, who detail the physical consummations that occurred in the communal barracks, the youths' bodies oiled and glistening under torchlight, the air heavy with a musky odor of arousal and exertion, building to climaxes that reinforce hierarchy and loyalty, but often left psychological scars manifesting in the warrior's renowned stoicism and emotional detachment. Even more shocking, this institutionalized pederasty extended into the military phalanx, where homosexual bonds were encouraged to enhance cohesion, as Plato's Symposium idealizes through the character Pausanias, who praises how lovers fighting side by side would rather die than abandon each other, a principle vividly illustrated in Spartan history during the Battle of Leuctra in 371 BCE, where the Theban sacred band, inspired by Spartan models but composed of adult male couples, decimated the Spartan lines, revealing the ironic vulnerability when such intimate dependencies were exploited. Yet in Sparta itself, these relationships persisted beyond adolescence, with some sources like the Roman-era writer Pausanias hinting at lifelong partnerships that blurred the lines between camaraderie and carnality, fostering a culture where male intimacy was both a strength and a secret of shame. Compounding this, the Spartans' approach to heterosexuality unveiled equally twisted customs, particularly in marriage rituals that subverted gender norms in grotesque ways, as described by Plutarch, where on the wedding night, the bride shaved her head, donned male clothing, and lay in darkness awaiting her groom, a practice ostensibly to ease the husband's transition from pederastic relations with boys to intercourse with a woman, the room reeking of incense to mask her feminine scent, the act commencing with violent abduction, simulating rape, her disguised form allowing the man to project his homosexual experiences onto her, culminating in penetration that often resulted in bruising and trauma, yet celebrated as the inception of strong progeny. This bridal masquerade escalated into broader marital dysfunctions, where polyandry, women having multiple husbands, was not only tolerated but encouraged for eugenic purposes, as Herodotus recounts in his histories tales of Spartan kings like Anaxandridas who maintained 2 wives simultaneously to ensure heirs, but extending to common citizens where brothers shared a single wife, or husbands loaned their spouses to more virile men, the bedrooms becoming sites of calculated inseminations where jealousy was suppressed in favor of producing robust offspring, the women's bodies treated as communal vessels, their moans echoing through thin walls as different men took turns, fostering a society where paternity was ambiguous and loyalty fractured. Delving deeper, Spartan women's sexual autonomy presented a facade of empowerment masking underlying horrors, as Aristotle criticizes in his Politics their licentiousness, noting how they exercised nude alongside men, their sweat-slicked forms exposed in the palestra, inciting lust that led to adulterous encounters condoned if they resulted in superior children. Yet this freedom came at the cost of objectification, with women like Queen Gorgo, wife of Leonidas, navigating a world where her intelligence was secondary to her reproductive role. Historical anecdotes from Plutarch's sayings of Spartan women revealing her sharp rebukes to foreign envoys questioning Spartan polyandry, yet privately enduring the psychological toll of shared intimacies that eroded personal bonds. The medical abnormalities intertwined with these practices added layers of revulsion, as the relentless pursuit of physical perfection led to inbreeding among the elite Spartiates, resulting in congenital defects like the hip dysplasia speculated in King Eugenics II, whose lameness, according to Xenophon's Hellenica, stemmed from familial unions too close, his reign marked by paranoia over his legitimacy, exacerbating isolation that manifested in tyrannical behaviors, the royal bedchambers, sites of desperate attempts to conceive despite anatomical hindrances, with physicians employing crude interventions like herbal aphrodisiacs laced with opium, inducing hallucinatory copulations that blurred consent and coercion. Hidden suffering lurked behind these public facades, as the agoge deprivations extended to sexual initiations that traumatized youths. Contemporary observer Thucydides alluding in his history of the Peloponnesian War to the emotional hardening that made Spartans formidable yet inhuman. Boys like the legendary Brasidas enduring pederastic advances that left them with festering resentments, channeled in a battlefield fury, but privately eroding their psyches, leading to high rates of what modern psychology would term post-traumatic stress, manifested in the laconic speech that masked deeper dissociations. Graphic details censored from mainstream accounts emerge in fragments from lesser-known sources like the poet Alcman, whose Parthenia hymns celebrate virgin choruses yet hint at lesbian liaisons among Spartan girls, their training paralleling boys with nude gymnastics, fostering same-sex explorations in the groves sacred to Artemis, fingers tracing sweat-beaded skin under moonlight, acts that prepared them for marital duties but instilled a bifurcated sexuality where pleasure was divorced from procreation, leading to dysfunctional unions where wives sought fulfillment elsewhere. Escalating further, the Spartan emphasis on eugenics birthed abhorrent practices like the exposure of deformed infants, but extended to sexual selection where impotent husbands were shamed into allowing substitutes, as detailed in Plutarch's life of Agesilaus, where the king's own lineage was questioned due to such arrangements. The act of cuckoldry formalized in assemblies where men voted on breeding partners, reducing intimacy to a civic duty, the participants' bodies writhing in obligatory ecstasy, semen mingling in wombs that bore children of uncertain heritage, fostering societal paranoia over bloodlines. Royal dysfunction amplified these intimacies into political catastrophes, as with King Cleomenes I, whose madness, attributed by Herodotus to divine retribution but likely rooted in incestuous rumors within the dual kingship, led to erratic policies that weakened Sparta, his bed shared with sisters and whispered scandals, the palace reeking of forbidden unions that produced heirs with psychological instabilities, culminating in his suicide by self-mutilation, a grotesque in symbolizing the internal rot of Spartan sexual mores. Medical anomalies further distorted historical events, such as the postpartum hemorrhages that plagued Spartan queens, their bodies exhausted from multiple partners and rigorous training, as inferred from archaeological finds of votive offerings to Eileithyia, goddess of childbirth, depicting swollen vulvas and bloodied linens, interventions involving crude cauterizations with hot irons, the screams piercing the night as women bled out, their deaths attributed to fate but stemming from the relentless demand for warriors, altering succession lines and sparking civil unrest. The hidden suffering of collateral victims, spouses, children, helots, unfolded in shadows, wives like the unnamed consort of King Archidamus II enduring public humiliations when loaned to allies for diplomatic breeding, their psyches fracturing under the weight of objectification, children raised in ambiguity, suffering identity crises, as evidenced by the revolt of the Kinertai, bastard sons who challenged Spartan hierarchy, their origins in taboo liaisons fueling resentment that eroded the state's foundations. Graphic historical details, suppressed in sanitized textbooks, include the Cryptia, where young Spartans hunted helots, but some account from Strabo suggests sexual violations preceded killings, the victims' bodies defiled in rituals that blended murder with rape, the forests echoing with pleas ignored in the name of training, fostering a culture of desensitization where empathy was eradicated, the perpetrators returning with bloodied phalluses as badges of honor. As conditions worsened over centuries, the Spartan population dwindled due to these practices, the oliganthropia, man shortage, exacerbated by low birth rates from delayed marriages and selective infanticide, husbands increasingly absent on campaigns, turning to pederasty for solace, wives resorting to helot lovers in desperation, breeding hybrid offspring that diluted the pure Spartiate blood, as lamented by Aristotle, leading to a demographic collapse that invited invasions. Desperate measures intensified, with laws mandating fines for bachelors and rewards for prolific breeders. Yet enforcement involved public shamings where impotent men were paraded nude, their genitals mocked in festivals, provoking suicides, the community gatherings devolving into orgiastic attempts to stimulate fertility, wine-fueled copulations under the stars where boundaries dissolved, but resulting in more deformities from inebriated conceptions. Paranoia and isolation gripped the elite, kings like Nabis in the Hellenistic era, surrounding themselves with eunuch guards to prevent cuckoldry, their harem sites of forced sterilizations, the surgical knives slicing through flesh in dimly lit chambers, the eunuch's high-pitched wails a constant reminder of emasculation, this psychological deterioration mirroring the state's decline into tyranny. The final collapse manifested in battles like Sellasia in 222 BCE, where Spartan forces, weakened by internal divisions stemming from sexual scandals, crumbled, the warriors' bonds frayed by jealousies over shared lovers, their phalanxes breaking not from enemy swords but from eroded trust. In death scenes, the dysfunction's role loomed large, as with Leonidas of Thermopylae, whose childless marriage prompted pre-battle rituals of symbolic insemination with his men, a last-ditch eugenic act recounted in fragmented epics. His body later desecrated by Persians who uncovered the Spartans' intimate tattoos marking pederastic pairs, revealing secrets to the world. Autopsies and aftermaths, though rudimentary, exposed truths like the skeletal remains from Spartan graves showing pelvic deformities from repeated childbirths under duress, documentary evidence from the Spartan archives, as cited by Polybius, detailing cover-ups where royal bastards were legitimized through fabricated genealogies. Historians like Ephorus sanitizing accounts to preserve the myth of Spartan purity. Preserved evidence endures in artifacts like the bronze figurines depicting entwined male youths, their erect phalluses symbolizing the bonds that built and broke the state, inscribed pottery shards bearing erotic verses from the Syssitian messes where men dined and coupled. Returning to that opening barracks scene, now transformed with our unearthed knowledge, you no longer merely tremble in ignorance, but comprehend the profound tragedy of a society where twisted sexual practices, born of noble intentions, devolve into mechanisms of control and destruction. The sweat and blood, not just markers of training, but emblems of suppressed humanity. Broader themes emerge about power's corruption through intimacy, how the quest for perfection in body and battle led to the erosion of the soul, echoing in modern parallels where militarized cultures grapple with sexual scandals and ranks, from hazing rituals to suppressed abuses, reminding us that hidden truths, once revealed, expose the fragile veneer of heroism. Contemporary dynamics persist in elite institutions where mentorship blurs into exploitation, or in eugenic echoes within genetic engineering debates. The Spartan legacy a cautionary specter haunting our ethical boundaries. We conclude with a haunting image. The ghostly phalanx of Spartan shades, their armored forms intertwined in eternal embraces that blend love and violation. Marching through the mists of history, their silent groans a perpetual testament to the horror and tragedy of desires warped by duty.